Awesome. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Looks like people are still trickling in, so we're going to wait a few minutes. Thank you so much for joining us today. Awesome. As I'm sure you've gathered, you're at the College of Charleston Pathway to Climate Risk Mitigation and Carbon Neutrality session. And we'll get started in about one more minute. Giving people a chance here to get into the session.
And while we're waiting, thank you for moderating for us, Bridget.
Thank you. Excited to hear all the great work going on.
Look forward to sharing.
All right. Why don't we go ahead and get started? And for those latecomers, they can watch the replay that will be available immediately after the session. You can click replay on any of the sessions that have already been happening. So with that, I will just say welcome again. Thank you so much for being here with us today. This session is the College of Charleston Pathway to Climate Risk Mitigation and Carbon Neutrality. I am joined by Fred James, the National Business Director in Higher Education at Siemens Smart Infrastructure, and Darcy Everett, the Sustainability Director at the College of Charleston. So thank you so much for sharing your awesome project with us today. We're really excited to hear about it. So first, I just wanted to welcome everyone, and I'll introduce myself. I'm Bridget Flynn, a Climate Programs Manager at Second Nature, and we're really excited to hear about the great work going on today. Quickly, before we get started, I just want to lead us in a quick land acknowledgement. Hopefully you were all able to make it to the keynote today. It was totally amazing with Megan Redshirt Shaw to move beyond the land acknowledgement. And one of the ways that we're doing that is Second Nature has been convening a group and working on what that might look like to be committed to Indigenous sovereignty at Second Nature and in partnership with IEN. So some of the resources that we've been compiling will be put in the chat by Chantal. Thank you so much to my colleague Chantal for helping out in this session. So currently I reside and recreate in Arvada, Colorado on the unceded land of the Ute, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and Lakota people who have stewarded this land and know many of its secrets. I invite you to type into the chat the land that you occupy, in addition to learning the traditional territories of where you live, which will be also in the chat. We encourage you to please learn about the history of the land that you occupy and recreate, and reckon with inheriting a colonialist mindset of land ownership and the heritage of broken treaties and stolen land. Be inquisitive about Indigenous wisdom and then take action. We welcome you to donate time and money to Indigenous-led organizations. There are many who are doing incredible environmental work and amplify the voices of Indigenous people leading change movements and return land to Indigenous stewards. So thank you for those who are writing in the chat. And with that, I'd also like for you to participate here today too by letting us know in the chat your organization and what brought you here today if you would like. And we also have a poll to just sort of get us started today. So as I'm bringing Darcy on stage and turning it over to her, we're going to put a poll up on stage for you to let us know where you're at on your climate action journey. So whether you're just starting, you're planning, taking action, or moving towards carbon positive. So cool. It looks like we just published that, and I'm going to show it on stage here so you can see in real time folks filling it out for us. So you might be in many of these stages simultaneously, so you can click on a couple of them if you would like. And as those results are tallying in, I just again want to welcome you all to this session and thank Fred and Darcy for your insights and moving us to carbon positive and doing some really great planning work to share with our community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Darcy Everett from the College of Charleston to discuss planning towards carbon neutrality and climate risk mitigation.
Thank you, Bridget. I am thrilled to be speaking this afternoon at the Higher Education Climate Leadership Summit, and appreciate everyone who's participating in the poll right now, and appreciate the land acknowledgement at the beginning of the presentation as well. And so, Bridget, if you don't mind taking that poll down, I will share my screen and we will get started today. Thank you. All right, excellent. All right, so like I said, really excited to be speaking this afternoon, and I'm excited to talk about our journey at the College of Charleston. And I know many of us in higher education are at different points along our climate journeys, as we just saw from that poll. And so my goal today is to share a few of the successes we've experienced at the college, and at a college that is still very much in the planning and early action phase, but a college that has gained some lessons learned. And hopefully through the presentation today, we'll also hear from some audience members about your journeys as well. So just to set the stage a little bit, wanted to give a little bit of background on the College of Charleston for those of you who may not have visited our campus before. So we were founded in 1770, and we like to claim that we are the oldest university south of Virginia and 13th oldest in the country. We have a little over 10,000 students, both undergrad and graduate students on campus. Our campus footprint, our main footprint, is right in the heart of downtown Charleston. So it's about a block away from King Street, if you've ever visited. So a lot of visitors that travel through our campus on a daily basis. We have a marine laboratory as a satellite campus, Stono Preserve, which is an 800-acre forested and also marshland property that the college owns, and then also an athletics facility called Patriots Point. So all those together are about 3.6 million gross square feet that we have, and we have and maintain about 150 buildings that date from 1770 up to 2018. And wanted to also throw in our give a shout out to Clyde the Cougar, our mascot here at the College of Charleston. So in addition to some background about the college, I also wanted to highlight some of the key local climate risks that we're facing as a coastal campus in South Carolina. If anyone has visited Charleston or surrounding areas, you might know that this area is called the Low Country. And being in the Low Country, we're directly impacted by sea level rise. So these graphs I'm sharing here are from the City of Charleston's flooding and sea level rise strategy that was developed in 2019. And we are trending right now in the kind of that orange swath that you see going up related to minor coastal flooding. And before I moved to Charleston, had not heard the terminology sunny day flooding that we experience here in Charleston, where we have king tides and high tides. We see flooding downtown and the sun is shining above. And so our campus, just to give you an idea of where we're located, so this is the Charleston Peninsula, and that orange dot is our campus. And this is our campus with a 2.5-foot sea level rise. So we see that water coming very close to our doorsteps. So sea level rise, flooding, very much a climate risk that we're facing. And in addition to sea level rise, we're also facing climate risks related to extreme heat. The city and our medical university of South Carolina worked with a company called Kappa to conduct a heat analysis of the peninsula and surrounding areas that you can see in this graphic. So volunteers, including myself, drove around Charleston on a hot July day, and we measured temperatures throughout the downtown area. And the dark red areas highlighting where the campus is, again, on that peninsula location, are experiencing extreme heat. And as we know, those areas can absorb and retain heat, which can cause adverse health impacts. So another significant climate risk that we are facing in Charleston. And so recognizing those risks that we're facing, sustainability has been a critical and ongoing focus at the college from both an operational standpoint, also an academic standpoint, with the recognition that we can use our campus as a living laboratory for students to be able to gain experiential learning opportunities around solving these wicked problems like climate change. And so from the start, this journey at CFC has really been student-driven. So in 2010, a partnership was formed between our Student Government Association and our Graduate Student Association, where they voted to create a green fee to spur sustainable investment on campus. And so from the beginning, again, student-driven kind of sustainability initiatives. Our Office of Sustainability was formed the following year, and we've been spearheading sustainability initiatives ever since, including becoming signatories with Second Nature in 2017. And so really committing to climate action at that point. So let's talk a little bit more specifically about our climate journey. So I've divided our journey into 3 sections that have proven to be necessary in building momentum around action on our campus. So I'll start with policy and planning, followed by operational improvements that we've made, and lastly, talk about collaboration and engagement opportunities that have helped us in moving forward. So when we're talking about policy and planning activities, we recognize that climate action cannot just live in one space or one office on campus, on a higher education campus. And so I'm teaching a class this semester on organizational sustainability and had created this pyramid to show the building blocks that are really critical to embedding these large-scale sustainability efforts like climate action planning into an organization. And so first and foremost, we talk about organizational governance and the importance of making sure that our climate action planning efforts are either aligned with or built into the governance structures that exist on our campus at the College of Charleston. And so for us, in order to make sure that our priorities around climate action were aligned, we looked at the college's strategic plan, which had just been revised and released in 2022, and made sure that our climate action strategies supported the goals of our campus. And so first we looked at our mission statement, and our mission statement, luckily, ties in really nicely to climate action planning. So it talks about that we as a college want to focus on developing globally fluent citizens who can create innovative solutions to social, economic, and environmental challenges. Name a bigger challenge than climate change that we're facing today. So making sure that we're tied into that mission. We also identified these cross-cutting commitments that are identified in the CFC strategic plan, focused around using innovation to create sustainable solutions, commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then creating impactful strategic partnerships as well. So once we identified where these opportunities existed for us to connect to the strategic plan, we took these and then built our own sustainability-focused action plan. So we identified 4 key pillars and goals for our campus community surrounding sustainability that focus on operations, academics, and culture. And pillar number 1 is our college's commitment to achieve carbon neutrality. So if we're thinking about trend lines here, we were able to become signatories in 2017 and identify our commitment to carbon neutrality. And we're able to carry that through our commitment to our strategic planning process, and then identify that as one of our top priorities for our sustainability action plan. So really becoming signatories and making that commitment was able to allow us to kind of tie into our new sustainability action plan that now is creating momentum around that on campus. So we wanted to also make sure that we didn't only tie our goals to just internal policies and plans, but also think globally, tying back to our mission statement of developing globally fluent citizens. So we made sure that our sustainability action plan and our carbon neutrality goal were tied to the UN SDG goals as well. And so our sustainability action plan, which was really a key piece to this puzzle, was approved by our senior team and board of trustees in May of 2021. So great, now we have a document, we have approval from key stakeholders on campus, but how do we actually begin to plan for and implement these pillars? So we began to reach out to key stakeholders on campus, and we have now created what we call partner teams. And we started with our first pillar and focused on carbon neutrality. So we made sure we had representation from a broad sector of the college. You can see on the left-hand side of the slide, that we made sure that we engage folks from multiple disciplines, operations, and academics to ensure that we're building in also opportunities for student experiential learning along the way. And so this climate team is helping us to create a decarbonization glide path that we'll talk about in a few more slides. So if we think back to that pyramid that I shared earlier, we've brought our climate action priorities in line with our organizational governance. We've identified our operational boundaries based on our greenhouse gas emissions, and we've developed our 4 strategies. And through those strategies, we've engaged in ongoing discussions with our stakeholders around climate action. So now we want to actually take steps behind that commitment that we've made. So based on our greenhouse gas emissions inventory, electricity consumption, our scope 2 emissions, as you can see from this slide, is approximately 42% of our total emissions output as a college. So that's really our biggest area of opportunity. Our scope 1 emissions, mostly natural gas consumption, adds an additional 16% to our total emissions. So we identified priorities around our operational emissions, specifically natural gas and electricity, focusing on reducing demand first, then focusing on optimizing our supply, and then finally looking beyond energy to a full decarbonization effort on campus. But reducing demand on a historic urban campus where the average age of our buildings is more than 100 years old is not an easy task. So we embarked on an energy savings performance contract to enable us to make significant energy and water savings without those insurmountable upfront costs. So the college was looking for opportunities to implement energy conservation, reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, overall operating costs, all while also aligning with our sustainability action plan goals and creating innovative solutions for our campus. So after a competitive bidding process, the college selected Siemens as our energy savings performance contractor. And I'll turn it over to Fred James now to talk about the project specifics of what we're implementing at CFC from an operational standpoint and the emissions impact of that project. So take it away, Fred.
Great. Thank you, Darcy. I want to start by saying that we're certainly honored to have been selected by the College of Charleston as their ESCO partner. And we've been working together very collaboratively for over 2 years, and we look forward to sharing some of what's being accomplished at the campus. And to summarize the goals and the accomplishments, you can look at the 4 quadrants here that Darcy quickly referenced. And to try to meet these expectations within the existing utilities budget was really the challenge. And I can happily say, getting right to a punchline, that we're very much living up to that challenge through our collaborative relationship. Next. So before going too far down the line here, Darcy mentioned energy savings performance contract, and this is a tool that can be extremely important to driving and meeting sustainability reduction goals. I want to make sure people listening understand generally what an energy savings performance contract is. So starting on the left, capital is made available to make campus improvements, upgrades, replacements, automation, optimization. And those improvements ultimately create savings. And so going to the right side, and every state is different, but the savings in green, that with respect to purchase utilities, gas, electricity, water, as well as some operational savings, are guaranteed within the performance contract. We'll talk about some of the other savings and benefits in a little bit, but those savings themselves are used to pay back the initial and financed investment. And so some people think of it as a revolving green fund, and that's really what it is, with a little bit of formality and guarantees. Next. And so Darcy did a great job, obviously, of characterizing her college's campus. And, it's a medium-sized campus, but it certainly has its own character, a lot of character. And complexity. She mentioned 150 buildings, over 3.6 million square feet, and many of those buildings are old, some over 200 years. And so that presents its own challenges. But common to almost all campuses is that you've also got a diversity of buildings. And each of these building types, as you see on the right, has their own opportunities, challenges, and priorities. And so I'll just list a few to give you a sense of contrast when you're thinking about it from an energy and emissions perspective, as well as the realities of capital constraints. So, if you think about the blue box, School of Sciences, that is going to be a energy intensive type of building because they're going to have labs and, high levels of ventilation. Creating opportunities certainly for savings and generally at relatively low payback. On the other hand, central utilities plant, very energy intensive, right? But also very capital intensive. You're talking about large scale generation equipment. You're talking about underground utility distribution, and addressing those is capital intensive. So large savings, but also long paybacks. And then let's jump to the bottom, teacher education building. A more typical academic building, certainly going to have some opportunity for savings, but here the priority more than savings is going to be on improving performance of the building in terms of delivering that ideal learning environment, well lit, comfortable, and delivering that energy sort of when it's needed and not when it's not needed, right? And when it's an unoccupied building. So differences in how we tackle different buildings. Next, Darcy. And in terms of the toolbox that the ESCO is going to bring to campus, this represents some of the major tools. But let's focus on the bottom row first, and let's pull the water conservation out for a moment. The other four items really represent what we consider a smart campus foundation. You think about on the right, the campus submetering. You really can't manage a campus without understanding, at least at a building level, what you're consuming within each of your facilities. Lighting is very important. Obviously, energy savings, you're going to improve the performance of the building, but it also enables, a dimming occupancy control, again, to deliver, lighting when and where required. And then, of course, the building automation, the integrated energy management system, again, those platforms that enable you to manage and optimize energy, well into the future. You take that toolbox and apply it to the facilities, and now you're talking about, building commissioning, which is really a tune-up of your building with respect to your controls and mechanical systems. COVID has made indoor air quality and ventilation that much more important, and that can actually run contrary to energy savings, but very important, right? We talked about labs. Utilities, again, aging equipment, deferred maintenance is a huge problem at universities. It's very capital intensive, and seldom do we have the budgets for it. So we've got to create savings within a performance contract to make these kinds of improvements. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then utilities decentralization on campuses is growing more important as we're moving sort of from steam to hot water and moving toward electrification with heat pumps. And there's a variety of other reasons why you may decentralize even certain buildings within a campus. And we'll show an example or two of that. So we took this toolbox and we applied it across the entire College of Charleston campus. Next, Darcy. And so what I'm going to show you on the next two slides is sort of, what landed in terms of some of the energy conservation facility improvement measures. And we'll do that across only two different types of facilities. One is going to be, your academic buildings, your student housing, which is what we're looking at. And the other is going to be in the utility system. So you see what's, many of the measures that are being implemented across campus buildings, are including lighting upgrades, the ability to provide lighting controls, dimming, occupancy control, HVAC, mechanical upgrades. Of course, the variable frequency drives allow us to, operate our motors more efficiently. Having that, energy management platform across campus is very important to continuous management and proactive optimization. And a lot of what all of this does is, again, enables the delivery of that ideal, well-lit, comfortable, heating, cooled campus environment, and delivering that, again, when it's needed, taking advantage of, HVAC setbacks and occupancy control with respect to lighting and heating and cooling. Now, on the other hand, as we move to a very different type of infrastructure, the campus utilities on the next slide. So here at the College of Charleston, you can see the list of many of the utility improvements that were made, starting with, submetering every building for utilities, making steam system repairs, not only repairing, but replacing some boilers and chillers. And that, gives you new equipment, but that new equipment is also more efficient. And where you need new capacity to meet growth, we can also deliver that. Boiler stack economizer is going to make the heating more efficient. putting in utility control systems allows you to monitor, manage, and optimize on a continuous basis. Cooling towers oftentimes are in a state of disrepair, and ultimately they reach end of life. Cooling tower management, an easy opportunity here is putting in the metering such that the vast amounts of water that's actually vaporized and not going down a sewer, that you're not getting charged sewer charges for that evaporated water. And then on the College of Charleston, there were in fact some buildings where it made more sense to put in some decentralized heating rather than to rip up streets and repair steam distribution lines and condensate return lines. And so in these cases, some decentralized but highly efficient boilers were installed. Next. So we think about the types of improvements bundled within this energy savings performance contract. That bundling piece becomes very important. When you think about, each of these facility improvement categories is going to deliver varying levels of performance improvement, that smart campus foundation for, life cycle management, the guaranteed energy and operational savings, which fund the investments in the first place, the avoided capital of deferred maintenance of replacing or addressing aging equipment, and then pertinent to this audience certainly is meeting the college's sustainability goals. So a quick contrast here, you think about the Smart Campus Foundation, that's investments in the future, but you're not getting tremendous direct and initial return or payback on that. Instead, you look at lighting, the energy conservation measures that are facilitated by building automation. These are they're delivering high levels of performance improvement, high levels of savings, and relatively low payback. And what some of that lower payback savings can do is fund the investments in some of your bigger ticket items, some of your mechanical upgrades, some of your campus utility upgrades, then also provide significant amounts of savings and emissions reduction. Next. So let's kind of roll that up. And at the College of Charleston, this particular energy savings performance contract, you can see on the pie chart on the left, the relative savings delivered by each of the categories of energy conservation measures and facility improvement measures. And the bottom line here is that each one of those categories delivers and is delivering significant amounts of savings. What does that roll up to? Well, in year one of the contract, the guaranteed savings is $1.7 million per year. And in this particular contract, we're escalating utility prices or costs at about 1% per year. So I think we can all acknowledge that over the last year and going forward, we may see rates much higher than that in terms of rates of purchase utility escalation. But even at that kind of conservative level, over the 15-year contract, this particular contract will deliver over $28.2 million of guaranteed savings. And that's, again, savings that are coming out of the existing utility budget. And that $28 million of savings pays for the $23.4 million of initial investment and the financing costs associated with that. Now, certainly beyond the term of the contract, that $2 million is net savings for the college to be reinvested where it makes sense. And so in summary, we've talked about the fact that, the middle bar here represents that guaranteed savings that is going to be funding straight out of the operating budget the improvements necessary to deliver the savings. The rectangle on the right are incremental added benefits that come at really no additional costs, but they're very significant in terms of improved comfort and lighting and reliability, addressing millions of dollars in capital that just needs to be invested. And frankly, it's hard to find the budget to do that. And of course, reduced emissions and facilities productivity. When you think about your maintenance team, it takes a lot less maintenance to maintain new equipment versus old equipment, right? And so there's a lot of additional benefits here besides the guaranteed savings. And then finally, as a roll up, next slide. The emissions reduction, delivered toward the college's sustainability goals is also very significant, reducing fuel, electricity, water, and greenhouse gas emissions, by significant amounts. And so, as Darcy kind of characterized, this project is a step toward their sustainability goals. And Darcy's going to take it away and talk about, where the college is heading next.
Thanks, Fred. So yeah, really excited about taking that big chunk out of our emissions from that demand. And as I was talking to Vice President for Facilities Management, it's low-hanging fruit, right, to be able to kind of engage on this process. So we're really excited to see those energy savings as a result of this project, but we don't want to stop there. So we now need to go back to those operational priorities that we defined, start focusing on energy supply, and look at the additional emissions that we need to tackle to achieve our goal of carbon neutrality. So enter our decarbonization glide path. And so this glide path will lay out the actual action steps that we'll need to take as a campus to achieve our stated goal. So 2021, as I'm sure many of the other higher education folks or in the meeting can agree with, was a really good year for emissions. We significantly reduced our study abroad air emissions, which was a huge component of our Scope 3 emissions. Commuting decreased significantly based on a lot of faculty and staff telecommuting and having online classes. But we recognize, as you can kind of see on the base case glide path on the right-hand side, that there is going to be a return to normal. And so accounting for that, we're already seeing, study abroad is kind of right back at where it was in 2019. So taking that into account, and then also taking into account opportunities for growth on campus. So potentially new academic buildings, increase in student population, and so taking that into account. And so taking both of those, we understand that we need to offset or eliminate a little over 45,000 metric tons of carbon dioxide equivalents for our campus. So how do we actually do that? And so this roadmap basically helps us kind of lay out that plan for defining levers, defining priorities for our campus beyond then the energy savings that we're seeing from the energy savings performance contract. So right now we're in the prioritize section of this roadmap where we've created a list of decarbonization measures, and we're working with our campus stakeholders, both our campus partner team and also working with student groups across campus to prioritize those. Make sure that we're aligned, again, back with our strategic plan to finalize what activities we want to include in our in our climate action plan. And through this process, we want to identify, again, those key levers that we can adjust to move us towards carbon neutrality. And some of those large levers that we want to focus on, things like transportation, renewable electricity, fossil fuel use, and campus facilities. So our Scope 3 emissions, if you remember back to that chart that I showed, are about as large as our Scope 2 emissions. And now that was representative of 2019 levels. But so transportation will be a really big area of focus for us, both, transportation, ground transportation, but also study abroad and air transportation as well. We'll also look to continue at diversifying our supply, reducing our fossil fuel use, and rethinking about how we utilize our space. And I think that was one of the most interesting pieces that's come out of our climate partner team is that space utilization, especially now that we have more of a hybrid staff and faculty working scenario with many folks telecommuting. So how do we best utilize our space and think through that through a lens of greenhouse gas emissions reductions as well. So for all the levers we're investigating, we're assessing them from multiple different levels. So we're assessing them from a financial perspective, time frame, how long would it actually take to implement these, a GHG reduction potential, thinking about market respectability, and also campus visibility and campus engagement. I mentioned experiential learning is a really big priority for the college. And so how can we embed those experiential learning opportunities into our climate action planning process and into actually implementing that climate action process? And so the last area that I wanted to discuss before we turn it over to some questions from the audience, and also hopefully some stories shared from the audience, is an area, again, that we've seen critical in our climate action journey, and that's around collaboration and engagement. And we need to make sure that our campus operations, our academic opportunities, and our campus community are all moving towards similar goals in order to create a culture of climate action and then more broadly sustainability action at COC. And so we've seen the most success creating these sorts of synergies by engaging with diverse stakeholders, seeking out collaborative opportunities, and convening innovators around the table. And so I want to highlight just a few projects that, again, have been some successes for us as we've been basically uplifting this conversation on campus. The first one is our first installed solar project on campus, and it's called our Solar Pavilion. And this project started with a request from our admissions office that we need more spots on campus tours that offer shade during the hot summer months. Next thing you know, we are able to incorporate solar energy thanks to a grant from the DOE and our South Carolina Energy Office. We have students that were able to conduct an archaeological dig on the site. And this dig actually ended up unearthing a slave tag, which was an extremely impactful moment for the campus that will be remembered through this project. And so you can see all the partners that we were able to engage in this. It started from just a request for some extra shade on campus, that we've set a precedent for future projects and collaborations that can coalesce around making our college more resilient. And speaking of resiliency, I wanted to also highlight a consortium that the college recently helped bring to life called CORE SC, which stands for the Center of Resilience Excellence. And that's focusing on implementing scalable and replicable solutions to resilience challenges in the low country of South Carolina. And so this collaborative team is working across multiple levels of government, nonprofits, and higher education at the college to look at innovations like electric car charging in Charleston, solar energy and battery storage for emergency management in downtown. So this really allows the college to leverage these local and national expertise, grant funding, and then also climate-focused technologies that we weren't able to access prior to this consortium that was created. So the ability to tap into these resources will be really critical for our path forward as well. And through the Energy Savings Project, another collaboration that's been critical to our climate action and sustainability planning are these additional synergies that we found with Siemens that I'll let Fred touch on here.
Thank you, Darcy. I'll quickly highlight each of these, but it really stems from the fact that, our university and college relationships tend to be long-term, and we're really looking to, in addition to the kind of what you'd call project work, connect to the college's core mission or strategic objectives, in this case, sustainability and always students. And so, some of our, on the left there, some of our university greenhouse gas decarbonization planning experts are working closely with Darcy to help with that decarbonization roadmap. In the middle piece there, Siemens is a global leader in technologies related to digital factory automation, mechatronics, product lifecycle, and design management. And these technologies are used, widely by high-tech companies. So in the Charleston area, you've got Boeing and BMW and GE and even Siemens. And so they're looking for students who come out of, school, already exposed to these technologies. And so, we're working with the College of Charleston's engineering department to see how we can adopt some of these academic programs within the department for the college's benefit. And then the last one is Siemens provided the college with an Empower grant program that was used to pay for a waste characterization study, which, the results just came in and they really heighten what needs to be done to reduce waste consistent with Darcy's goals.
Yeah, our second pillar of our sustainability action plan is zero waste, which we hope to achieve by 2035. So this was really giving us some baseline data, and it's a little over 70% that's still recoverable that we found through this waste characterization study. So another challenge for the campus to tackle. And the final area that I'll mention that I think is critical for our ability to keep moving forward around climate action is the engagement of our faculty and students. And I think I saw a question pop in about, if we're engaging students in this process. So we've been extremely lucky the past 5 years at the college. We've had a quality enhancement plan that's part of our accreditation process that has been focused on sustainability literacy. So through this lens, we've been able to build a really strong foundation of sustainability and climate literate students, as well as faculty. So this means we have folks pushing for climate action at all levels across the campus. We have seen this action through a few different areas. This just highlights some of the kind of sustainability literacy events that we've hosted on campus to engage, again, both students and faculty in understanding how sustainability, and climate action planning can be engaged across multiple disciplines, academic disciplines. So, some ways that we're engaging those faculty and staff through this, we hosted an 8-part series last year called Climate Fridays, where we had CFC faculty bringing their expertise to the table about how we try and solve or even just think about climate. We hosted a climate pledge where we had more than 500 students commit to engaging on climate action on campus. We hosted the South Carolina Power Dialogue for Solve Climate by 2030, where we brought folks from across the state to talk about solving climate, both in the Low Country and beyond. And so working alongside of our students on a daily basis through our internship program, through the academic side, through honors programs, et cetera, really reminds me of why I think we all are doing this work, why we're committing to carbon neutrality, why we're teaching sustainability literacy, why we're developing climate action plans, and why we're all kind of on this journey together. So with that, I will wrap up and again say that our journey at the College of Charleston is not close to over. So we've got a lot of hard work ahead of us. We're moving forward, and hopefully some of these stories, projects, and examples that we were able to share today of some of the successes we've seen on campus have inspired you, or now you have inspirational ideas that you'd like to share with us. So I'll again say thank you to Second Nature and Intentional Endowments Network for hosting the Higher Education Climate Leadership Summit. And I'll turn it back over to Bridget and Chantal.
Hello, great, thank you. So we have a number of questions in the Q&A, a lot of questions. So we will try to see how many we can get to. David, you have your hand raised. Were you going to ask a question or just share what you shared in the chat? Maybe you can write in the chat if you still would like to ask your question. Otherwise, we will go to the highest voted question in the Q&A, which right now is, what Scope 3 solutions have you found to be the most impactful to reduce emissions?
So yeah, I would say our two biggest components of our Scope 3 emissions are commuting, and then also study abroad and airline travel, as well as ground travel that we have on campus. So those are two of our biggest sectors for Scope 3. And so, as part of the levers that we are looking at through our decarbonization glide path opportunity, are some of the basic items like carbon offsets that can be purchased. We had a climate planning workshop with students, and some of the ideas that they brought to the table were things like study abroad North America, or thinking about how we can maybe localize study abroad to reduce some of those airline miles traveled. The ideas of virtual study abroad have been talked about as well. And on the commuting side, so we just conducted our commuting survey on campus. And so we have about 1,000 respondents to give us some feedback on that. But so we're working with our local transportation agency, CARTA, to encourage ridership on that, and also looking forward to a new bike share program that we are that will be launched in Charleston to grow that. So, we're still very much in those identifying those priorities that we want to include in our climate action plan. But for us, it's really focusing on commuting and then the airline miles traveled on campus.
Thank you, Darcy. That's great. So the next question that has risen up here is, are the performance contracting models only useful for measures mentioned, or can a campus use it to do building insulation, air sealing, window replacements, moving away from fossil fuel-based heating to beneficial electrification?
Darcy, shall I take that one?
Yes.
Okay. Performance contracting models are actually very flexible and can accomplish any number of energy saving or energy conservation measures or facility improvement measures, certainly including the ones you mentioned. The ones you mentioned, in fact, we had building envelope up there. I don't think I spoke to it given the time, but certainly there was building insulation, air sealing included if you think about the College of Charleston's buildings, many of them are old, you would expect that some building sealing would be beneficial. And in fact, it is, and it does derive some of the savings we presented. Window replacements, they're a longer term payback item. They absolutely have been included in performance contracts where you can find the savings to effectively subsidize what is typically a very long-term payback energy conservation measure. But at some point, you've got to deal with that. And then the last part of the question, dealing with electrification, absolutely. As I mentioned, many campuses are moving toward electrification. I can see that the question's coming from the state of New York. And in New York, the situation's quite different, where you've got significant NYSERDA, grants for these types of things, and maybe more importantly, you've got the assurance that the electricity you're purchasing from the grid is growing greener and greener over time. In South Carolina, you don't have that yet. You have a real challenge in terms of greening of the grid. And so you have to question, do I want to invest in electrification if I don't have assurance that the energy I purchase from the grid is going to be green?
Thank you, Fred. That's really great. Actually, can we maybe, one of the other questions that I feel like is related to that is, if your campus has already made a lot of the low-hanging fruit investments like LED lighting or energy efficiency upgrades, is an energy or like a ESPC or a relationship like this in ESCO still possible? And does Siemens provide upfront capital, or how can you help campuses to who maybe have done a few low-hanging fruit projects?
Yeah, that's a rather complex question. So I'm going to try to boil it down. The bottom line is absolutely, performance contracting is not limited to locations where the low-hanging fruit has been addressed. There's a number of ways to address that type of additional challenge. In different states, you have the ability to incorporate different types of savings, including operational maintenance, and in some places, capital avoidance. You also can be very selective about the facility operations measures that you implement. You can stipulate savings in some cases. You can choose to not guarantee certain measures and keep them outside of the contractual savings requirement. And you can make capital contributions that would basically extend the ability to pay back the capital for some of the longer payback implementation measures. So there's a lot to work with there, and it becomes case by case and state by state.
Great. Thank you so much. That's really useful. So let me see. We answered a couple of those. One of the earlier questions was, did you involve students in creating the plan? And you addressed that already, but I wanted to give you a chance to just maybe say a little bit more about student involvement.
Yeah, I would love to. So yeah, as we kicked off our climate partner team with faculty and staff, we also hosted student opportunities for climate action planning, kind of as we kicked off this process. And then this year, I've actually been working with a team of students that are part of a program here at the College of Charleston called Honors Engaged, that are working with us on climate action plan. And we have our Sustainability Week coming up April 18th through the 22nd. And we're going to be hosting a climate action planning tabling where we're going to start getting feedback from students on, these levers that we've identified. What's most important to you? What are the key pieces that you as students want to see as part of our climate action planning effort? So now that we've kind of identified those levers, now we're working to get feedback on where are those priorities from a student perspective as well.
Awesome. Thank
And
you.
if I could chime in, I've had enough exposure to Darcy and how she performs her role as sustainability director, and it's really all about stakeholder engagement. And we've experienced that through the waste characterization study, through the decarbonization planning. It's all about stakeholder input and trying to create a consensus to drive the momentum.
Thank you. That's really wonderful. We are always very happy to hear when students get a chance to be involved. And I think you mentioned some really great examples of that. There's two technology questions here. The first is, are you considering the use of green hydrogen or fuel cells to power campus?
Yeah.
Darcy, do you want to start with that one, or do you want me to start with that one?
Yeah, you can start, because I think we'll have the same answer. But
yeah, I mean, I think it ties back to, you've got to have green energy to produce green hydrogen. And right now, that is a challenge. And I think the other dimension here is that, as Darcy has kind of presented, the College of Charleston's at the initial stage of working through its strategic plan and its decarbonization pathway. And so, this ESCO project was a very significant phase one, but there's a lot of studying that's going on right here now to evaluate all the levers and options that may be available and may make sense, and then to kind of stage or phase them out over a timeline. And so nothing has been eliminated, but we certainly didn't start with green hydrogen and fuel cells.
Yeah, and I think the other piece to as we're developing these levers and these opportunities for us to look at becoming carbon neutral and going back to that idea of experiential learning education, is how can we tie student research into this? So, thinking about that to me becomes an awesome student research project to be able to look at the feasibility of that. So that's kind of a component as we're looking at these levers, or seeing the opportunities for getting students involved in that research and that information that can help us make those future decisions as a campus.
Awesome. This is a quick one. So, Darcy, how big is your sustainability team?
We have 2 full-time staff, 2 graduate assistants, and then we have a team of this semester 11 student interns. So yeah, again, this office was created really student-driven from the beginning. So our internship program is one of our biggest successes, I think, of our sustainability program on campus. So it's a big component of where we spend our time. And I have a climate innovation intern that I work with as well. So we get them hands-on in helping us to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and things like that.
That's awesome. Many of you know I was at Oberlin and managed the sustainability internship program. So I'm always just so happy to hear about internship programs and how valuable they are, both to the work of the office and for the students. So thank you so much for sharing. That's always really exciting to hear about. So another question we have is, do you have some examples of successful demand side energy reduction programs?
Do you want to take that one, Fred?
I'm not sure if the question is targeting the College of Charleston or in general.
I'll go ahead and bring them on stage and you can ask your question, CJ.
Put you on the spot, CJ.
If you'd like. Oh, I think actually you might have to raise your hand in order for me to bring you on stage. I just only brought the question on stage, huh?
So it might be some of the specific projects, Fred, that we did. So the, switch out to LED lights, some of the water fixture replacements that we did on campus potentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think we spent a fair amount of time talking about the demand side projects that are being implemented across the College of Charleston campus, within the academic buildings.
Yeah.
And also, within the utility system, which is a supply system, but at the end of the day, what we're trying to do with regard to emissions is reduce the amount of imported electricity and consume natural gas. And so, you could consider those demand side projects as well. So I think the entire project is more or less a demand side project.
That was great. Thank you.
Oh, is that all you? We're happy to elaborate further, CJ. But
well, sure. Hi, thank you so much for taking my question. Yeah, working with, as you mentioned in your presentation, there's a diverse range of buildings and building users on campus. From students have different user needs and they use energy differently, as sometimes staff might do with in their offices. So I was just curious if you had some specific examples. And I'm sorry if you go over them, I just didn't catch them. But yeah.
Gotcha. So you're also referring to, behavioral change?
Yes. Yeah. So that's definitely on one of our big levers for us to make sure that's part of our climate action planning. And, small scale items that we've incorporated so far are through, we have a green office program on campus. And so use that as an opportunity for education and like nudges and reminders around electricity usage and electricity consumption in offices. So that's one way that we address behavioral change, or specifically around energy, is through our green office program that we host.
Yeah, and there's no question, CJ, that behavioral change is something that we have to constantly think about and drive. By the same token, as we talked about at the College of Charleston, we're also using technology to ensure that if behavior isn't perfect, we're still not using excess energy, by utilizing, temperature setbacks and occupancy control with respect to lighting and HVAC. So it takes both.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. That's wonderful. So in our last 3 to 4 minutes here, Fred, there's just a couple questions for you about sharing your contact information and slides. I put your email here in the chat, but I believe that you're comfortable sharing the slides, and we can either email them or they'll be able to see the replay after this session. So just wanted to make sure about that.
Yeah, they are Darcy's slides, so it's up to her, and I'm happy to type my email address in the comment box if that's helpful.
Great. And then Fred, do you have an equivalent in Canada, someone who works in higher ed in Canada, for our friends at Bow Valley College in Alberta?
Yeah, absolutely. We have an office in Calgary that serves Alberta, and we serve some of the University of Calgary is a large customer of ours. So yes, I can certainly connect somebody with our Calgary office.
Wonderful. We can make sure that happens. I have Amy's info, and yeah, Amy, thank you for your interest. I'll also just quickly plug that Siemens has a virtual booth at the conference. So if you want to see some of the other resources that they've provided for higher ed, as you've seen today, they're doing a lot of great work, especially with the College of Charleston. So thank you so much for sharing it. In our final 2 minutes, unless you guys have other thoughts, I will start to close us out here. First, I just want to say thank you so much to Fred and Darcy for sharing this case study with us. And thank you to the audience for sharing just these very thoughtful and insightful questions. Really happy that we got to so many of them. I didn't think we would make it. So great job on timing, everyone. This was a really wonderful session. And also wanted to shout out to Megan, who's part of the Honors Engaged team and is here in this session. So thank you for being here, Megan, and for all the amazing work that you're doing as part of your project. So thank you for that. And I will quickly plug next that we have a break coming up here in the program, but then after that, we're showing a film screening tonight of 2040. It will happen at 5:30 Eastern time, so in about 30 minutes here. And it's a really hopeful film, which is, very different than most of the climate change films that we see. It's really about implementing solutions that we have today, not so dissimilar to our presentation today. So I hope you can join us for that. And unless there's any other closing comments, I'll just thank everyone again for being here for this presentation and for the amazing work that you're doing to advance climate progress. And yeah, thank everyone again.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.